Hello, it's Wednesday the 21st of December. Yes, Santa is on his way. And this is the Ask TCW podcast. Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, whenever you're listening. It's a pleasure to have you on board. This is the FTCW podcast. We are live currently, so if you would like to get in touch with us, you can do via Twitter. Our handle, which you should know by now, is @CatsWhiskersTV, and just use the hashtag AskTCW. I'm delighted to say that joining me, Aaron, this evening is Andy Haywood.
Evening.
He's come off his sick bed. It's Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
We thought we had. We thought he had.
Sorry, forgot to switch my mic on. Hello.
Hello. And finally, let's hope she's got a mic on. It's Tina Taylor.
I hope I've got my mic on as well.
Well, the problem is Ant's with us tonight, so he can't tweet us in and let us know whether he can hear us or not. But let's hope we're all live anyway. So thank you very much for joining us. It is the last Ask TCW podcast of the year. Can I just get an R from you three, please?
Oh,
sorry.
Well, that went well. Anyway, let's get cracking with some of the questions that we've had in this week. Thank you very much for getting in touch with us. We'll go back to one that basically has come up due to the podcast that we did at the beginning of the week. And it comes from a Ginler, and it comes from the Cage Forum. And a Ginler asks, did last night's cast of TCW just upset Corey by assuming in yesterday's Evening Post article he was having a dig at Panthers management by him saying he was not getting their support? Because if that's not what Corey meant, they just shot him, obviously implying us. Now, obviously, Tina, I'll come to you first because you were on that podcast. What's your kind of thoughts on Ginler's question?
I don't think for 1 minute whatever any of us said will matter. Quite frankly, I don't think that the Panthers organisation base any of their business around what we on the Cats Whiskers podcast say. So that's the first thing I will say. The second thing is, it's just our opinion. It's not necessarily right. It's not necessarily, what Corey Nielsen was trying to say. And, sometimes it is very easy to read something and read between the lines for something that isn't actually there in the first place. I mean, looking at all the social media reaction from that article, I think, you can have 12 different opinions on what you think Corey Nielsen is trying to say or not trying to say. So we were asked for our opinion. We gave our opinion, and again, it's not necessarily in line with what Corey Nielsen was trying to say. Only Corey Nielsen knows what Corey Nielsen was trying to say in the article, really.
Very true, Andy. Us as a podcast have been kind of questioned about our opinions and the fact that people think we might sit on the fence not to annoy or upset anybody within the organisation. So, everybody said their opinion on Monday night about the Corey article. So surely it's a good thing that we gave our opinion, whether it was right or wrong, like Tina says.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that we're in a sort of strange situation really with what we do and how we go about doing it. I certainly don't think that we should sort of censor ourselves for any reason, because ultimately we don't have any sort of affiliation to the club, so we have no need to. But by the same token, we don't want to burn any bridges. So we do have to be careful with some things, and ultimately at the end of the day, none of us are, particularly privy to some of the things that go on behind the closed door, so to speak. So a lot of the time it is just opinions, because obviously we don't know any sort of better. We don't, certainly from a personal standpoint, don't get any sort of insider information or any whispers or gossip or news or anything like that before anybody else. So it is literally a show based on opinions. And so I personally don't think that we've ever really sat on the fence, because ultimately it is just that. It's our opinions.
And finally, and obviously, new into the group, and you've been on a few podcasts before. What's your kind of, just to back up what we've kind of said, do you feel that it is just opinions and it's very good for us to give opinions, whether that's might upset somebody or might be positive towards somebody, but at the end of the day it is just opinions, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, and nobody, you're not going to live in a world where everybody's going to agree with everything that everybody says. It'd be a pretty boring place if we did. To be fair, I've listening to the podcast, listening to the show live on Monday, I found myself agreeing vastly with a lot with what you guys said, and I think the question came about because some people were feeling that Corey was having a go at the fans as opposed to, basically stating what the situation was. So, no, I don't think, Corey's a big enough bloke, like Tina says, he knows what he's going to say. Like I say, it'd be pretty boring if we all agreed with each other.
Very.
The article as well is very much trying to sort of deflect a bit of the heat away from the players, which you could argue is what a coach should be doing.
It's a classic Mourinho tactic, if anything.
Taking the pressure away from the players and sort of, at the end of the day, I watched a program the other day with an interview with Eddie Jones, the England rugby coach, and he said that everything that he says in the media, he says as if he's speaking to the players. So everything that he says, he wants that to come across to the players, not necessarily to, Tom, Dick, and Harry that are watching it, but he wants to relay messages to the players through the media. And so if you're seen to be saying, you know what, that guy wasn't very good this week, or this guy's been poor for the past 4 or 5 games, it's going to annoy and upset the players. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it can be effective and sometimes it has to be done. But at other times you've got to sort of protect your players almost, and sort of look after them. And I think that's what the article was. I don't necessarily think it was having a go at the club, and I don't necessarily, I didn't read into it, but it was having a go at the fans. I just think it was sort of an article that was trying to relay their position as players and coaches and sort of protect them as well.
I mean, the thing with the written article as well is obviously, you, as you read it, could take it in a totally different way of what it was actually, written in or spoken in to the interviewee. So it's very tough in that aspect. And I do think, like Ant says, and both, Tina and Andy as well, is that some people have taken it in the sense that it is against the fans, and obviously us here on Monday's podcast took it a little bit different. But hopefully, again, though, we've kind of sort of explained, what our views on what we said on Monday, and obviously Andy's and Ant's tonight as well. So we'll move on there. But thank you very much for contacting us and getting in touch with us. Another question that comes from the weekend just gone, and it's in response to Jono's tweet from Saturday, obviously against the Belfast Giants this was regarding. And Jono tweeted, "With some extra bodies, we could have won this game. About time the management made some of the cash the fans provide available." And then Stephen Elliott has got in touch with us, and he is at @Elliott__92 on Twitter. And Stephen says, should have some more import D, but even still, surely there's some young D that could support and help manage ice time. League is gone. If they aren't going to spend cash, and then in brackets, which they should, why not develop youngsters at least? So obviously, Stephen reacting to Jono's tweet from Saturday. Andy, obviously, we've talked about in previous podcasts, import D down. Both the Jeffs in Dimon and War still out. It looks like they're coming round to potentially being back in the next few weeks, because I believe they're both back on the ice now, but it's about seeing reactions, etc. But what do you feel about Stephen's tweet regarding, obviously, developing youngsters at least?
I think it's an interesting one, because I know that there will be people that will be dead against that. And whilst I do think the league has gone, and whilst I'm sure most people think that the league has gone, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are still paying a lot of money to come and watch what arguably they would want the best possible team out there, and not a development team. It's a fine line, because you do have to sort of bleed players in and get them used to situations so that down the line you can use them. I do think that realistically we're going to come to a bit of a, not necessarily the end of an era as such, but obviously there's going to be a fair few British players that all will seem to move on at once. I would imagine that Clark, Colin Shields, Ashley Tate, obviously Jonathan Weaver's moved down a league now, but he'd be another one. Arguably, potentially Matthew Myers, and a couple more, I'm sure, that will all go. And realistically, the quality of those British players, we need people that are going to take their place. And currently, at the moment, there isn't anybody that sort of fits that bill. So it would be a good time to start looking towards the future. But by the same token, it's a fine line, because you can't be seen to just, the fans might have given up on the league, but the players and the coaches certainly can't give up on the league, because it then becomes, it becomes a bit more of an issue with people turning up and wanting to watch games and all that sort of stuff. So it's a tough one. I do think that perhaps we could be looking at different things, but then we've seen this season already where we had a young British defenseman that was plying his trade here, and he's chosen to go down a different career path, and that's perfectly acceptable and perfectly fine. But obviously, by the same token, as a club, can we afford to give somebody else a chance that potentially either might not cut it and ends up getting no ice time whatsoever, and next season goes back down to the league below, or just decides hockey's not going to be a lasting career for me, I want to look elsewhere.
I mean, and obviously, Andy just talked there about, Oakford. We've had Swindlehurst, a couple of seasons ago now, both young British D-men that we haven't replaced. Do you feel that we should be looking at maybe even younger players than those, in the lower leagues, maybe for the Lions, for example? I know Jono is a big, supporter and thinker in the sense of there should be a bit more of a link up between the two clubs. But do you feel that, we should be developing youngsters if we have import D out, or do you think we should be looking to replace those import D with another import?
I mean, for me, it's not the Nottingham Panthers' role or job to develop young players for the GB national team. However, you do need a decent core of British players for your own team, and you've already covered it with the players that we've got coming up. Due to they've probably not got many more seasons left in them. Where is the next David Clark? I mean, if you look back at our history, Corey has normally had like a youngster or two that he's developed, and you think the likes of Marcus Maynard, Josh Ward, Lacko was one of those, Betteridge as he is now. We've always had one or two that have been in and around the team for a while, and then they play the odd shift, and then they get more and more game time. We had the 3 kids that came in for the Champions League. What's happened to that in the last few years? Other than Ollie stepping up from the EPL into a full-time contract, we've not had anybody. And losing Swinney and losing Oakford like we have done, and then obviously getting these injuries on D, it's going to cause you problems. And yes, in my opinion, we should be replacing. We should have extras, imports anyway. I think we could afford it. However, even if it's a kid that comes on and plays 2 shifts a period, that's 2 shifts a period that our knackered D at the moment are getting a rest for. And why there isn't a direct link between the Lions and the Panthers, I don't know. Obviously, it's a big step between the 2 leagues, but why haven't we got like a 3-tier system? Why haven't we got somewhere for the Lions to go to the EPL and then somewhere in the EPL to come to us? I don't know. It baffles me.
I mean, Tina, just to bring you in on this one, just on what Ant kind of says there at the very end, sort of like a 3-tier. You're potentially going to be looking then maybe from the EPL to Peterborough, the Peterborough Phantoms, where obviously Tom Norton is, once a Panther, but again left due to, his outside of hockey career and developing that. Do you think, though, that the pressure is just too much now on coaches? As Ant said, Corey has always been that I would class as at the forefront of developing Brits. It's always been something that he's been immensely proud on. But do you just think the pressure is just too great on winning things that you can't put the time and effort into that now because you're potentially going to be looking at, damaging your results and potentially even your career?
I'd like to think there's room for both, to be honest. I'm probably the least experienced of all of us here on the podcast today in terms of talking about hockey. But when I first started watching, that was sort of when Josh Ward was still one of these, young Brits, and I think it was possibly the year that Lacko was down in the EPL, or the year after, I forget which, but. Yeah, like you say, Corey Nielsen has got this pedigree of developing the youngsters, the young Brits, the next generation of David Clarks and Stevie Lees, and it just seems to have just kind of been bled out of the club. And if you want to just sort of simplify the question of do we replace our import D, or do we bring some, young Brits in to develop? Personally, I'd like to think there's room for both, because if you're a coach who's got a long-term plan and you want to stay where you are, then you have to try and plan for the future. And this league is going to have no future if there are no Brits. And like like has been rightly pointed out, you've got to think that the likes of Clark and Tate and I don't know, it's Jonathan Phillips, I think to a certain extent, they're all coming towards the ends of their careers. So you've got to have the backfill. Surely, surely somebody else has got to be there, and it's not just about the gaps that may very well leave for the GB team. It is about sustaining the elite league, because if you get to an elite league that has got 1 or 2 Brits or something, then I think that's in a lot of trouble, and it's in danger of disappearing up its own backside like the ISL did. So I mean, I obviously wasn't watching hockey for the ISL, but it was it just sounded like it just got too rich for everybody.
I mean, the whole whose job is it to kind of develop Brits is a big mountain of just, you could do a podcast on its own, and I'm sure we probably will do when it comes to the GB in April maybe. But hopefully we've provided you with some answers there, Stephen. And just sticking with the Brits at the moment, it comes from it's another question. It comes from @MooseJawRed on Twitter, and they say that they think we should be looking at some Brit signings for next season. So obviously you've all kind of mentioned about the Brits there. So if you can just, who do you think we should be? I tell you what, we'll take this in two sections. Who do you think we should sign, and who do you think we have a realistic chance of getting? So, I mean, just throw out kind of two names if you can. And you start with this one.
Can I poach players from other teams?
Well, yeah. So, who do you think we should go and get? No questions asked. We'll go and get them. But who do you think we can? And then who do you think we can realistically get?
I've always really rated that Luke Ferrara that now plays in Sheffield. Mm-hmm. We had him for a while, and I thought, what I saw of him in the brief glimpses he had with us, I thought it was a decent prospect. I'd love for us to nick him off those Orange guys. As for the rest of the British players, I honestly haven't got a clue. Lewis Hook was talked about a while, but he's been in and around Coventry and seems to have settled back in the EPL. I can't tell you. I don't know enough about the younger players that are in the EPL. I do quite rate the goalie that Hull have got, but obviously he'd just be sat on the bench for us, so it's pretty much a waste of time for that.
Okay, and do you think we could realistically get Luke Ferreira?
Oh, nothing's unrealistic, is it? Money talks at the end of the day. And if this guy's serious about going pro, then he's going to want to look for the best deal possible. I don't know. Okay. I honestly don't know.
Tina, who would you, in an ideal world, like to go and get?
Well, just before I answer that, I mean, one thing that it might be worth pointing out is as far as I'm aware, Milton Keynes are still expecting to make the jump next season and come up to the Elite League. Now, obviously, they are going to be trying to align themselves to the level of imports that the Elite League allows. I mean, I don't expect them to go full pelt and have the absolute full amount of imports that they're allowed to have, but I would imagine there will be a few more imports in, so as there will be some Brit players whose noses are going to be pushed out. So it may very well be that some of those guys will be looking to. I mean, I imagine some of them will look to stay in the EPL and go to other EPL teams. But you'd like to think that some of them would have a bit of ambition, and maybe one or two of those would be ambitious enough and be good enough and have a good enough work rate, so as they could impress the Nottingham Panthers coaching team. So that's sort of worth considering. I mean, I don't know a lot about the Milton Keynes roster, but maybe there's a possibility there. In terms of who I think we should sign, I was quite disappointed to see us let Swindlehurst go. So in terms of where our defence is at the moment, we've only got Stevie Lee in terms of Brit defencemen. So I would be. I don't think it's realistic, but I would like to think that it would be potentially a consideration, perhaps. I mean, yeah. Other than that, I honestly do not know. But I think there might be something in the spread of Brits that will possibly come from Milton Keynes joining the Elite League.
Okie dokie. And I mean, just on that, obviously, Jordan Cowney and Lewis Hook are currently with the Milton Keynes Lightning, so it'll be interesting to see if Tina's kind of right in that, and whether they potentially stay with Milton Keynes or look to join another club. But Andy, your final thoughts on this Brit signings for next season? Who do you think we should go and get, and are they realistic in your views?
Well, I think ultimately there's only two names that you would particularly sort of throw out there as being marquee Brit signings. I think Ben Bounds would be one, and I think Ben O'Connor would be the other. Both are highly unlikely and highly unrealistic. But if you were asking a question as to which ones would you like, it would be one of those two. I do think with Bounds, as good as he is, I do often think that if you were to be in a big game, who would you rather have in net? would you rather have Ben Bounds or would you rather have Mika Wheatman on a big game? And I think at the moment, currently, it'd still always be Mika. I used to do it a lot with Stephen Murphy and Kowalski when we had the big games. And, yes, we went through a really good spell where we were successful against Belfast in cup semi-finals and finals and things like that. But over the course of the season, Stephen Murphy won a lot more medals than K-Wall. But I think Ben O'Connor would be the one. I think he's head and shoulders the best British player out there. But it's never going to happen, is it? So I think as far as realistic ones go, I think ultimately you're going to have to look for relative fringe players that do the rounds, because I think sort of the more marquee ones are comfortable and stable. Phillips, Dowd, realistically, they're not going to leave Sheffield. Obviously, Colin Shields isn't going to leave Belfast anytime soon, and Murphy, another one. Let's be honest, it was a massive shock that Peacock went. As much as obviously he'd always get his name sort of thrown in a hat as, why don't we sign him? I was very much of the opinion, well, why would he leave Belfast? He's got himself on a good team. He's getting decent points and decent production, and it was a surprise that he went to Braehead. But I think realistically, you're going to be looking at your Davises, both Matty and Ben. Some of the not necessarily lower quality, but certainly not that marquee sort of stellar, top British name. And I think age has a lot to do with it as well, because obviously once they hit a certain age, they get comfortable where they are and they start thinking about their future. So you look at people like David Clark. He's doing coaching this year in Nottingham. There's it's an opportunity that he was never going to turn down, and it sets him up nicely for his future. He wasn't going to get enticed to go play a season in Cardiff because they'd offer him, an extra few £100 or whatever. I imagine that David Clark's a deal that gets done before he even has any opportunity to talk to anyone else. And I imagine that a lot of the Brits are like that. So I think realistically, it'd be probably a player that's maybe under 25 and currently doesn't get a great deal of ice time, and you could perhaps offer that as an incentive to come. Maybe a bit more ice time, but a lot more development. And it's that sort of thing.
Okie dokie. Well, I think obviously the Brit signings will be very interesting, and pretty much the Brit market at the end of the season and pre-season will be interesting to see how that goes about.
We just say as well, sorry, Corey did say at the start of the season that he was on about shaking up the Brit pack. We didn't get a shake-up at all, did we? We lost Matthew Myers and that was it. Obviously, we lost Oakford, but Swindlehurst went last season. But I will say the goalie I was on about at Hull, Jordan Marr, actually Edinburgh Capitals have just announced they've signed him for this weekend because
I've just seen that actually.
So they're obviously listening and thinking, we'll give him a go.
You should be a scout, Ant. You really should. Right, let's move on to another question, and it's a bit of a general question, so all three of you can take it in whichever way you want to. And it comes from Dan Martin at DanTheMan1988 on Twitter, and they say, what is the Panthers organisation doing? They just don't seem to care about us fans. Tina.
Well,
as I say, take it as you will. Do you feel they don't care about you as a fan?
I've got a slightly different perspective on it because I am a player sponsor as well.
Did you go skating last night?
I did go skating last night. Yes, it was
nice.
It was alright. I didn't fall over, so I consider that an achievement. Since I only
was it a good event? Was it, as a sponsor, were you happy with that event?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the success of an event like that depends on the approachability of the players, and so sometimes you can. I mean, yeah, for me personally, definitely, I feel a sort of bit daft, sort of just randomly skating up to a player. Well, for starters, if I skate up to a player, I go, I'm really sorry, I can't stop. So that's sort of that's most of my experience on a skate with the Panthers now, getting laughed at by players because I can't skate. But yeah, I mean, it's an event. It is an event that is in the sponsorship package, and I mean, you've got your different sets of players. There's a set of players that don't mind doing things like that. They like conversing with the fans and stuff. But and you've obviously got that set of players who would rather be anywhere but in that rink at that particular time. So if you've got enough players that have that approachability, then I think that sort of event can be a success. But I don't know. I'm trying to be very, very careful how I sort of word this, because sometimes I can get word vomit and offend people. It's a very general question. I mean, I think we may talk about it in a little while, but there are some very strange decisions that go on in the Panthers organisation, I think, and I think it can sometimes feel that they don't care about the fans, and I think. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I'm still sort of in the realms of being a new fan, so I don't feel that hard done to be honest. I mean, I think this season, for me personally, I have felt a bit shortchanged in the sense that in previous seasons we have had injuries and we've sourced replacements, and we're looking at the situation that we're in at the moment, and we've had two key import defensemen that have missed a massive chunk of games, and we haven't seen. I mean, obviously Kudrok came in and he's had to go again, but that still left us short by one. And yeah, you can feel a little bit shortchanged by that, because we're an organisation that is, from the outside looking in, financially successful. And it's an organisation that should really aspire to be challenging for every piece of silverware going. Now, we're looking at challenging for the Continental Cup. We're in the final of the Continental Cup, so yeah, in that respect, yeah, we're challenging for that. How well we're going to fare when we get there with the bodies that we're missing is another story, but. Because of the injuries that we've had, and the replacements we haven't had, or the people we've let go, i.e. Peter Callis, we've been playing short, and we're not really. I don't feel that we're a team that should be playing short, and I suspect. And I could be wrong, and I apologise to Dan if I'm taking this out of context, but the question sort of seems to fall in with the latest face-off change on the 2nd of January. So I think sometimes there can be some decisions that make us think that they don't care about the fans, and it's more about just getting people in the building. So yeah, I don't really have a specific answer for that question, because I think it's very, very general.
Okay, well, obviously you brought up the face-off change against the Edinburgh Capitals on January the 2nd. It's now been changed from 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock. On the first press release, it was cited as basically due to popular demand, and then there's on the latest kind of match website article, it talks about, obviously it's the last day before people go back to work, schools, etc. So 4 o'clock would be a better time, and also it is obviously a bank holiday So you treat it as a Sunday, and obviously Sunday face-offs are 4 o'clock. But it's just kind of, a lot of fans are unhappy about it because they've made plans. It's Forest are on at the same time, and they have match ticket offers on, which obviously they mean and are hoping for a big crowd. So there's people that were going to go to Forest and then on to the Panthers, and obviously they can't do that now. They'd have to choose one or the other. There's people saying that they were going to have a family meal beforehand, all booked, etc., and then go on to the Panthers. So let's tie that into this remaining question. And Andy, you know, that announcement, that face-off change has you know, angered a lot of people because it's just come out of the blue, like I've just said. But tying that into Dan's question as well, and if you can just give us a brief kind of answer and your feelings in regards to, you know, the fact that that Dan is saying, you know, the organisation just doesn't seem to care about us, and that one face-off change has been something that people have cited as a reason why they don't.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, first thing I will say is because it was a bank holiday, rightly or wrongly, I just presumed it was a 4 o'clock face-off. So literally until all this this article came out and obviously the sort of the furore around it, if that hadn't happened, there's a fair chance I'd have been there at 3 o'clock, wondering where everyone was, because I just genuinely thought it was a 4 o'clock face-off. I'd got it down on my calendar as a 4 o'clock face-off. But I can understand people's frustration. One of the things, you know, ultimately with all face-off changes, or even when a gig gets put on and we have to change a date, there are always going to be people who cannot make the fixture, the new fixture, and it sucks, but it's one of them things. I noticed, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, but an NHL game, I think it was Carolina and Detroit, got postponed because there was problems with the ice. And they delayed it to a point where they just said, you know what, we're going to have to cancel and play it another day. And they'll refund people tickets, or if you can still go, you can use the tickets from that game. And, you know, you see it in all sports where, you know, a fixture will get rearranged or anything like that. We're in a sort of a more not necessarily upsetting, but we're in a more sort of disadvantaged sport because obviously we're in an arena, and when something bigger than the hockey wants to come to an arena, we get shifted. But with regards to this actual sort of change, personally, I think it makes sense. But obviously, I appreciate that it's so close to the actual game day. But it does make it seem strange. And one of the things that I saw on social media about it was that someone had actually bought a ticket that day.
Yeah,
expecting it it was sold as a 7:30 face-off to that person, and then within an hour or two, it had changed to 4 o'clock, and obviously they then said they couldn't go because they were at work, and the only reason why they bought the tickets was because it was a 7:30 face-off, and you know, things like that. I mean, that's bad form in a lot of sense, but I don't know whether that's us or whether that's the arena. Or whether it's the box office, you know, it could be any one or all three, because by all accounts it could just be a lack of communication between all three as to sort of whose fault that is. But you know, it's going to annoy some people. Some people are going to have to make a decision as to whether they, you know, rearrange their family meals, or they go to the football, or they go to the hockey and that sort of thing. But it happens at least, you know, 2 or 3 times a season. It's never happened quite so close to the game day.
I mean, and just finally, and obviously quickly on this one, I believe you were in the same boat as Andy in the fact that you thought it was going to be a 4 o'clock face-off. But I mean, do you understand obviously people's frustrations, and It's just another thing that is annoying people at a time where a lot of people are frustrated and are kind of losing sense of what the Panthers are about as an organisation and what they as supporters are getting from it. And just very quickly, it is worth pointing out that the Nottingham Panthers Supporters Trust were supposed to be holding a meeting at 6:00 on January the 2nd at the Bunkers Hill. That meeting will now take place 30 minutes after the game. So it's still on the same day. If you get on Twitter, MP Supporters Trust, they'll be able to tell you all about it. But the meeting is still going ahead, but it's just 30 minutes after the game is finished, still at the Bunkers Hill. And there will be leaflets handing out explaining that as well. But Ant, can you understand people's frustrations quickly?
I can. I mean, like you said, I assumed it was going to be a 4 p.m. face-off anyway, with it being a bank holiday. I was quite surprised when I saw it was a 7:31 when I was updating my calendar. But what the Panthers don't seem to realise is I'm quite lucky in that I work a pretty generic Monday to Friday job. So I get bank holidays off and what have you. So the earlier face-off time actually suits me personally better. However, I know people that have planned their shifts around. As soon as that fixture list comes out, they start swapping shifts and what have you to make sure they can make the game. Now, I've got a friend who now can't make the game because he swapped his shift from the evening to the day because of the evening face-off time, and now they've swapped it around and he can't make it. And he's a season ticket holder. Whereas, season ticket holders can't get a refund. Those people that can buy match tickets can. And I think that's the frustrating thing. They've left it so late. And after the tickets have gone on sale as well. Surely that should be the deadline to move a game, is when you start selling tickets for that game.
Well, I mean, I suppose it'll be very interesting and you make a good point about season ticket holders in the sense of what that crowd will be. Because, as I said, on social media, it seems that a lot of people now can't make the game. So I suppose we'll wait and see what the attendance is for that game. So
just before you do move on, Aaron, just to point out, and it doesn't necessarily need an answer to this or anything. It's just a statement I felt like I wanted to make. We've seen a lot of reaction on social media to the change in face-off, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we've seen that, and we've all seen it. It's been on the forums, it's been on the Facebook groups, it's been on Twitter, but apparently this fixture was moved due to popular demand. And I don't, and you can all correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen a single person that has asked for that face-off to be moved.
Yeah, well, like obviously the first web article, press release, it did cite popular demand, as you said, and then the latest one says due to it being a bank holiday, etc., and people going back to work. So who knows whether that popular demand was in fact true. But like you said, I've not seen anybody either, so I suppose the only people that know whether that is the truth are the people that wrote that article. And like, what about the Cap fans? Because they've obviously made plans. They might have bought tickets, and it's a long trek back up, isn't it? So maybe if it was a 4:00 face-off, they might have bought a ticket because they'd get home at an earlier date. So we've not really heard much from Caps in general, have we? Or we've not even heard the Panthers relate to the Capitals in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's the other thing to consider, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, traditionally we don't see a lot of Capitals fans coming anyway, but it's an interesting question. Would more advance notice of that 4:00 face-off have made any difference to them? I really don't know. I haven't got a clue.
Well, only time will tell, I suppose. So
realistically, is the popular demand from the Caps fans? I don't know. But what if they said, we could bring 2 buses down if it was a 4:00 face-off?
Well, like I say, I suppose only time will tell. And if there's, 60 odd Caps fans, then maybe, the 4:00 face-off was to benefit them, and maybe they did have a word with the Panthers and say, put it on an earlier face-off. So
I'll tell you what, Andy. If we get 2 buses full of Caps fans turning up on January the 2nd, then I'm going in a syndicate with you for the lottery, because your powers of prediction just lately have been amazing.
I didn't do too bad in that game.
No, you didn't.
I've stopped doing it though, because it's going to end at some point.
Everybody, get onto Andy Haywood on Twitter and ask him for the lottery ticket numbers. He might be able to get you some money, and he also might not be able to. So let's move on to the last couple of questions now. And I'm afraid it's another not depressing, but it's another one where it obviously comes from, and I hope I'm right, and somebody that's a little bit kind of bored, as they said in their question. It comes from Neil from the Cage, and they say, is it just me that's bored of the same old coach expects better stories week in, week out on the website? When is somebody going to step up and actually do something about it? So again, very quickly, folks, do you feel that somebody needs to obviously there's, as has been discussed on previous podcasts, and if you are aware of the Supporters Trust, if you follow people on social media, read the forums, there's a bit of unrest, in the Panthers supporters. I think that's fair to say. So do you feel that somebody from the club should come out and stand up and kind of counteract that kind of unrest and talk to the fan base and maybe just quell that bit of unrest that's occurring now, Ant?
I don't know. It's all very samey, a bit stale, copy and paste. Press releases half the time, isn't it? I don't want to go on. I'll just end up going on a rant, to be honest.
Okay. Andy, just very quickly, do you feel that we need a bit of a refresh on things like the website, as Neil talks about?
Well, yeah, a new website would be nice. But with regards, like the press releases, it's always going to be pro to the team. It's the same in most sports. So I don't really have a problem with it. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes like I mentioned earlier on when we were on about the Evening Post article, sometimes you do need that sort of, you know what, guys, this isn't good enough, and we're going to publicly say that it's not good enough because it's been bad. But I do understand that the club and the coaches will always back their players and their own judgment, whether that's right or wrong in our eyes.
Tina, just very quickly, your thoughts?
Well, I don't want to say I'm bored of the story, the stories on the website, but I have stopped reading them because you kind of know what they're going to say. I mean, I agree that the club's own PR is going to be trying to support the team. It's going to be pro Panthers and trying to make a good a good story out of a bad game perhaps. But yeah, I think just a touch more. A touch more honesty sometimes would be nice. A change is as good as a rest, and I think sometimes it's a good idea. I think sometimes it is a good idea to not just use the same sort of as Neil says, coach expects better stories. I think sometimes we do need a bit of, well, that was awful. We're sorry about that. So. It's I get it, but it's as I say, I've stopped reading them because you pretty much know the standard of things that are going to come up in them. So I read the Post articles more often than I read the website.
Blimey, now you must get past through all the pop-ups and click-ups and everything that you need to click if you read them on the Nottingham Post.
I work in IT. I can get past these things,
Oh, well, there you go then. We will move on to the last two questions, and I do warn you, everybody, the last question that we have is an absolute belter. Very topical for this time of year, but we'll go to the penultimate question, and it comes from James at JC42Jackpot on Twitter, and James asks, Do you think the players are told not to be active on social media compared to players at other clubs who seem to engage with fans? Andy, I'll come to you first. Obviously, you're a Twitter person yourself, a previous member of Panthers Hockey Live. Do you think players should be more active on social media regarding fans, or do you just think it's their own personal preference?
I think it's up to the players themselves. I don't think that. Don't get me wrong. I think the club will have some sort of policy regarding what they are expected to do regarding promoting the club and things like that.
Do you think that would be so severe to say not to be active, as James says?
No, I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be a case. Yeah, you might have the odd people that perhaps don't agree with it or don't want you to use it, but I don't think they personally could stop you. Ultimately, if it's a personal account, it's a personal account for a reason. It's not. Yes, you are employed by the club, so you have to be careful what you say, but it is your personal social media. It isn't the club's social media, so I don't think even if they didn't want you to use it, I don't think they could stop you if you so desired.
Ant, sticking on the Panthers Hockey Live, you're obviously part of that group. Do you ever see any interaction from players maybe retweeting something you've said when they've, either had a fight or scored a goal or done something that you've mentioned them in?
Not this season, really, to be honest. There are a couple of the players that are more active than others. I mean, it's long gone are the days when Lacko used to tap goals in at the back door and Andy Haywood's favourite hashtag of backdoor action was born. He himself, he loved that sort of thing. But no, not really. We get a few tweets from ex-players and what have you, which is nice, that are still following the games. But not really that much interaction from these guys.
And Tina, as a player sponsor, you must have all the players following you on Twitter, surely.
Yeah. So I've got a few phone numbers and everything. No, I haven't. I've got absolutely nothing.
Do you think they're told not to?
No, I don't think so. I think it comes down to personality, to be perfectly honest. I think. You're either into things like that or you're not really. Anybody who follows me on Twitter, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm addicted to social media. Not probably a little bit strong words, but I'm always on my phone. I'm always using it. I'm always communicating. Various social media outlets and such. Just to use an example that is sort of close to home, if you will. My little sister, she's got absolutely no idea. She will not touch Twitter. She's got Instagram down, but she can't. I think somebody else linked her Instagram to Facebook. So when she puts something on Instagram, it does go on Facebook, but I don't think she did that. I don't think she knew how to do that. So you just have different people who like to do different things. There's people who will engage on social media and people who won't. And I think it's probably true of a lot of hockey players. I don't think that I don't think it's their thing really. So, it seems to be a thing with Panthers players particularly. I do sort of understand because you've got other players, other teams that that all have a chat to players and what have you. But yeah, I think it comes down to the personality of the players, and for whatever reason, we just seem to have a bunch of guys who aren't glued to their phones or they're not glued to social media, and it's just not their thing. So I don't think for 1 minute there'll be any kind of edict for you will not engage with fans on social media. If I thought that was the case, I'd happily sit here and say so. But no, I don't think so. I think it's the guys themselves.
Okie dokie. Thank you for your question, James. Now, our final question comes from somebody called Antoine Marie-Jeanne, who is part of the Panthers Hockey Live. And we actually have him on the phone right now to ask this question to the panel. So, Ant, welcome. to the show.
Pleased to meet you.
Thank you very much. I believe you've been listening in. If you would like to ask your question to the panel, and they will provide you with your answers.
Go on then. If you were to stage an Elite League panto, what would you put on, and who would be your main stars? I'm thinking it can be anybody connected to Elite League, past or present.
Who are you going to ask to that to first, Tina or Andy?
I'm going to go to you first, Aaron.
Hey!
It's about time you answered a good question.
It's not my job to answer questions on this podcast. You see, I didn't really think about this beforehand.
How rude.
Go. I know, it's terrible. Let's go. I've got to try and think who's lead heroes and villains in pantomime, to be honest.
Tina or Andy first, then, and then you can have a think while they're
well
talking.
Done. Thank you, Ant. You can come on this podcast again in the new year.
Tina.
Go
on, Andy.
No, Andy's jumping in. You go for your life, mate.
I was just going to say that my panto of choice would be Dick Whittingham, but unfortunately I couldn't narrow it down to just one person for the lead role. So.
Oh, go on, give us some examples.
There's too many.
There you go. There's a slap of the thigh there, ladies and gentlemen. Who would be your lead villain, though?
Honestly, I don't know who the lead villain is in Dick Whittington. Never seen it.
Let's get past Andy's gag and move on to Tina then.
Well, I took a slightly different take on this, but just purely and simply because one of the players that I had a bit of a chat to last night was Alex Nikiforuk, and obviously he's not a tall guy, so I don't know why, just sort of stuck in my head. So I thought Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs might work. so no, but I've even gone far enough to pin down the seven shortest players in the Elite League. So are you ready?
That's research. Wow.
I could never be accused of not doing my research. It's my thing. It's totally my thing.
Settle yourselves in, folks.
Right. Okay. So I'll go with the teams alphabetically and the players I've picked out. So from the Brayhead clan, that is Lee Esders. He has the dubious honour. Cardiff Devils, shortest man on the roster is Mad Dog Murdy. The Coventry Blaze, one of their new signings, Almeida and Ben Davies, no surprise there. We've got from the Dundee Stars, Vinny Scarcella, from the Five Flyers, Matt Siska, and obviously from Nottingham, Alex Nikiforuk. Now, in terms of the sort of lead role and the lead villain and what have you, if you think it's Snow White, you can't. You've got to give it to a girl, really. And if you're thinking anything to do with the word snow, I can't be involved in. that's just that can fly out the window. So I'm going to give that dubious honour to the First Lady of podcasting, Miss Claire Freeman, and she can for her Prince Charming. she can pick any one of her podcast cohorts. I'll let her get back to me on that one. And if we're talking lead villain, now we've got the Seven Dwarfs. Now our lead villain would obviously have to be, in terms of for the poor Seven Dwarfs, our lead villain is going to be the tallest man in the league, and that goes to Patrick Bordelot.
Well, there you go. I mean, Claire Freeman, you get to interview all the players from the Manchester Storm. You're on the BBC. You get to interview, the coach Russell. You have a lovely podcast, but can you beat being the official Elite League pantomime hero, Snow White? I don't think you can beat that. I think that is obviously your highest accolade to date. And really, can we get any better than what Tina said there? Are you happy with that answer?
Oh, it was brilliant. I'm still intrigued as to what you're going to say, though. You're not getting out of it.
I can safely say I've not done that research. So let's go very quickly. Cinderella, and the lead villain in Cinderella, obviously the wicked stepmother. Am I correct in thinking that?
I would say so.
The wicked stepmother. Well, I'm kind of with Andy here. There's quite a lot of nominations for these lead villains and roles. I'm going to go. I tell you what pantomime has the two ugly sisters?
That's Cinderella.
Is it Cinderella?
It is.
Okay, well, I'm going to go as Simsy as one of them. He can be one of the ugly sisters. And then
the other one's got to be Tomo then.
I'm happy with your suggestion. So there you go, Tomo. Well, congratulations. I know you're in a game at the moment, but by God, you're going to be happy when you listen to this, aren't you? And then obviously the lead hero riding in on his bike or horse possibly. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to go Brock Wilson.
Oh, look at that.
And I'm going to go Brock Wilson because of, his interviews that he's done of late, his love for the Panthers. And I think he's going to ride on here on an American Airlines jet. And he's just going to rescue the strength and conditioning of the Panthers.
Amen.
You're so cheesy.
Like I said, nowhere near as good as Tina's answer.
Yeah, you've only said that in the knowledge that he's one of the very few people that listen to this show.
And to be honest, I had no idea. How can you follow Tina's? I mean, if I was on, I would have gone shut it down straight after that. But
I know
anyway,
Jono was upset that he didn't get to see this because he wanted Moose Mustakovs on his panto just so he could shout, "It's behind you!"
Oh,
dear.
Oh, bit of banter. And with that terrible gag, I'm going to bring this podcast to a close. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Ant for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
That's all right. Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Andy.
No worries at all.
And thank you, Tina.
Cheers, TTFN.
And before we go, I would just like to say thank you to you, the listeners of this podcast. I've said it before, but this podcast really is about the people that get in touch with us. It wouldn't happen without you. It started off as a little section on our main podcast, and then obviously it grew to the point of where we decided to do it as a standalone podcast, and we've managed to keep that going all the way through the season and into this season. And as we've gone live with 3 podcasts a week, we've still managed to keep it. We really couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much for getting in touch with us over this year. We really do appreciate it. It is a podcast that we're proud of. And basically, it is the last one of this year. So from this individual podcast, enjoy your Christmas, have lots of food, drink sensibly. If you're going to the hockey, enjoy it. I hope your team wins, unless you are obviously the ugly sisters, and I hope you lose. But in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. Have a great Christmas and New Year. And the Ask TCW podcast will be back in 2017, and we look forward to seeing you then.